For today's double indie game review, we have the modern retro platformer Batboy, and then the beautiful game about fighting that is Strayed Lights. Batboy is a modern retro platformer that wears its Shovel Knight inspirations on its Super Sentai sleeves. We play as Batboy. He, along with his friends who each love a particular sport, decide one day to get Power Ranger style armor, become superheroes, and fight crime after school. And no one apparently questions how they all get powers as well. But when the evil Lord Vicious comes and kidnaps and brainwashes them, it's up to Batboy to save the day, one platforming level at a time. At the start, Batboy definitely plays similar to that of Shovel Knight, complete with finding miscellaneous items inside breakable walls, having to pogo bounce around, and of course beat up very similarly sports-themed bosses. That was not easy to say. After the first few levels, you'll start to see where Batboy does things a little bit differently compared to Shovel Knight, some of the other modern retro platformers we've played. There's a greater emphasis on the different powers and side abilities you get Mega Man style from each one of the bosses. These moves will unlock a variety of different attacks as well as different movement tech, including kind of a ground and air dash, super running ability, wall jumping, and even double jumping along with a grapple hook. And these abilities are very important as the levels definitely seem to be more and more catered to having one or multiple abilities to make use of, provided you have stamina for it. The game features a very interesting upgrade system. There are 3 seeds hidden in each level, one which you'll have to spend the in-game jewels on. These seeds can be turned into health and stamina upgrades at the various shops that you find, and then there's a cassette tape for kind of the jukebox. Now, with everything said, there were a few issues with Batboy, especially in terms of how this affects the difficulty. The kind of hitbox on Batboy as well as on his weapon is a little off in some areas. There are cases where I will jump onto a platform and because the little tiny tippy toes of his feet didn't quite get to the top of the platform, he's gonna fall right through. With his weapon, the normal attack is just so short range, and there were cases where I would swing, it looked like I connected with the enemy, but the attack did not register. And your best attack or your best offensive move in this game is the charge, throw your bat forward and kind of hovers in air. You can keep that on an enemy and it does multiple ticks per damage, or multiple ticks of damage, and it will really help you out during some of the game's boss fights. The difficulty of the level design itself definitely goes kind of a little bit all over the place. One of the things I did notice is that some sections feel particularly suited for you having multiple stamina points in order to kind of get through them as quickly and as safely as possible. And I would also recommend that when you're doing the upgrades for health and stamina, try to get to 5 points of stamina as quickly as you can, because this will allow you to make use of all your different movement techs, and it will really allow you to get past some of these sections far easier than you would otherwise. One of the other aspects of this game is that the focus on the special moves and abilities is a little bit different than what we saw in a Shovel Knight style game, where in that one, you can make most of the level design just by using your basic movement and kind of pogo tech. Here, there were some sections that I could not figure out how you were supposed to get through them without using your special abilities. Especially, again, having access to the air dash, and your throw the bat in the air and you can jump on it. With that said, Batboy is not going to be the game that's going to make you fall in love with modern retro platformers. Everything is definitely something that we've seen before or inspired by, but all in all, this is a very solid take. If you're someone who's looking for another 2D platformer to bounce, bat, and, well, fight bad guys with, then I would highly recommend checking out Batboy. It's not that long of a game unless you're going for 100%, and I do hope we see more from the studio or see some other prospects of modern retro design. With that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to switch to something that is very different with Strayed Lights. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. With Strayed Lights, we have a kind of a different game. This is a combination of the parry/repose style of a Sekiro with the fantasy and dreamlike aesthetic of Ori. The entire story is told without any dialogue and relies on just the gestures and body languages of our various characters. I'm not going to begin to pretend that I got everything here. Our kind of mission is to explore this land, trying to save our fellow, I guess they're tribes or various characters from our same species who have been overwhelmed by emotions. So there's a bit of persona here as well. The general gameplay is that each area is made up of multiple fights with kind of like the minion or garbage tier enemies, with the big bad waiting for you at the end. Your moveset is going to be primarily focused on parrying attacks. Enemies can be in 3 colors, red, blue, and purple. In order to properly parry, you must match the color of red and blue, while purple is unparryable and you must dodge. You can also punch enemies to gain a little bit extra damage as well. But your ultimate goal is to fill up your energy meter that's at the bottom of the screen. When it's completely filled, you can hit a button and kind of release as like AoE light attack that kills or finishes off all enemies. Now this is definitely not going to hit the same levels of complexity as Sekiro. Most of the enemy tells are pretty easy, but things do get more and more challenging when enemies begin to mix up their red and blue combos with a few purple hits along the way. There is a basic upgrade system which you'll unlock one of 3 different powers you can have active at one time, as well as getting additional ways of doing more damage or avoiding it. So here's the thing about Strayed Lights. It is one of those games where I can't help but feel there may have been a bigger game originally conceived than what we got. During the boss fights, you'll notice that the cutscenes introduce all kinds of different transformations, including gaining wings, multiple arms, and showing off some very beautiful choreography and light shows. But none of that is actually translated to the gameplay itself. Within about 20 to 30 minutes of playing this game, you will have all the moves, or the majority of the moves, that you will be using for the rest of this game, and the game itself is on the shorter side. I would say maybe 3.5 to 4 hours, give or take, to see the game through. There are some hidden collectibles, and you can also find kind of upgrade orbs or MacGuffins that will raise the amount of energy you gain when parrying. But this is again a game that, once I kind of learned it, it really did prove to be kind of like you're going along more for the ride as opposed to being challenged by the game. And if you had any luck playing Sekiro, that should be more than enough to get you through this one. Which is, I think, kind of both good and bad. Again, this is not a game that really, I think, shows off a lot of different attacks, different enemies. There are a few, again, advanced enemies, and there's one boss that kind of tricks you by showing the after image of the attack before the actual one. But again, it never is going to really test or grow those mechanics. Now, there are a few issues with the game, mainly in the performance side. I noticed quite a bit of frame rate loss during some of the more explosive boss battles, which, when you're trying to properly time your parries, it can be a little troublesome when the game decides to hitch in a few spots. And during the game's final boss, which is, I won't spoil it too much, but a giant fight, the camera does have a problem with keeping it in perspective, allowing you to properly time some of those attacks. But with that said though, there's definitely a game here for someone looking for a weekend style play. The aesthetics again are beautiful, the story is interesting, and it does just enough, I think, to kind of carry it through to the finish line. So if you're looking for something that is short and beautiful, I would definitely check out Strayed Lights. And with that, we're going to wrap up this double review. I would like to thank the developers of both games for giving me press keys to check them out. You let me tell your game for a future stream and video. please get in touch. Do all the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.